Meet Allison Malik, the founder and CEO of Middle Third. An engineer, she worked on electric vehicles for General Motors, moved to their corporate venture arm, and co-founded May Mobility, an autonomous vehicle transportation solution for urban transportation challenges.
Today, I'm going to talk about autonomy. A lot of people use the word autonomy and talk about how the technology is impacting our lives today, but there's a lot more detail behind what's getting talked about. So I want to make sure that you have the fundamental understanding of what the technology is, how it works in different applications, and where you can see it in the US today. We're going to start by talking about the 5 levels of autonomous driving. This is a really key piece of information to make sure that you can understand what different systems are capable of. Starting with level 0, this is like a classic car. It really can't do much of anything for itself. Level 1 is actually like the car you might own today if it has cruise control or even other features like lane keep. That will help you to be able to operate safely, but in this case, the driver is still in control. Level 2 systems are some of the most advanced systems on the road today. Things like Tesla's Autopilot and GM's Super Cruise fit into this category. This technology is still considered a driver assist function, but allows the driver to do a lot less while driving. So here you could be driving on the highway and maybe look away for a little bit, but these systems generally want to make sure you are paying attention because they do require the driver to take over when the system can't figure out how to operate. Level 3 systems are a system that is not typically used in industry yet. In a level 3 system, by a definition, there are scenarios where the vehicle can drive itself. There are also scenarios where the vehicle can't drive itself, and this is what gets tricky. When we think about level 3 systems, the questions that should come to mind are, how do you handle that handoff? When someone is behind the driver's seat, but understands that they don't need to pay attention because the vehicle can operate in that environment, they may still need to quickly take over, though, if something unexpected happens. As you hear more and more discussions in the media about driver attention, level 3 should come to mind. Level 4 autonomous systems are capable of driving fully autonomously in a specific, defined operational environment. It may be only in certain kinds of weather, in a certain geography, or on a certain type of roadway. Maybe it's fully autonomous on the highway, but can't drive in a city. Here, the idea is that the driver will never have to take over while the vehicle is operating in its specified design domain. If the vehicle is being used outside of its specified design domain, a driver may have to take over. This is most likely the first types of fully autonomous vehicles that you'll see out on the road. A level 5 autonomous system is a system that can drive anywhere in any situation. I believe that this technology is going to take a long time to fully develop when you think about even things like country roads that are unmarked. We as humans can observe that 2-track, we can choose to take it and hope that it ends up at a road that knows take us to the next town, but autonomous vehicles will not have that information stored, so we'll need to make sure that they are able to identify those things visually and also be able to adjust and make sure that they can update their maps, which is where a lot of the research is now taking place. There are some key technologies and fundamental ideas that are required in order for autonomous systems to work. Autonomous systems are considered automotive safety systems. And as an automotive safety system, there needs to be redundant capability in the vehicle. What you see here is actually how the vehicle sees the world around it. It is very important, as you can see, overlap between the different types of sensors, that you have that redundant sensing. The different types of sensors are also good at different things. So you see some out the front and the back of the vehicle that are focused on long-range sensing. And out the front, as well as the sides, you have a focus on short-range sensing. That'll help you to see things that are, maybe a dog running out in front of the car or a shopping cart getting close to your door. The long-range sensors will help the vehicle to be able to understand what's coming up behind it, as well as what's going on well in the distance ahead of it, so that way the computer system can make safe decisions about how to operate in traffic. The different types of sensors are also very important. Lots of autonomous vehicles use different collections of sensors, but fundamentally they use these three primary sensors. First, camera. Camera sensors work similar to our eyes. They're able to see the world around it in full color definition. They're great when there's sunlight and when there's not any weather occluding what you could see ahead of us. So think like a whiteout snowstorm or heavy rain. Cameras are challenging because there's a lot of information that needs to be processed in order to understand what the camera is actually seeing. Our brains and eyes happen to be very good computers for this type of information. There are advances going on in computation around things like neural networks that will help computers be able to decipher the pixels that are ahead of the vehicle. As this develops, cameras will become more and more important in autonomous technology systems. Radars are another type of sensor that's very important. Radars help to see even when there's no light and can help to see objects. So you can see through rain, through snow, and other types of weather, as well as in the dark. Where radar struggles is actually helping us to understand how those objects may or may not be moving. This is really important as you try to understand, is that an oncoming car or a parked car? And that's where LiDAR becomes really important. LiDAR is a laser-based radar that actually is able to help us understand how quickly things are moving in the environment based on the signals that are sent back to the sensor. These three sensors in combination help vehicles to see the world around them in high, reliable, and redundant detail. One of the biggest things to understand is that to prove out a reliable system and make sure that those redundancies you put in place are successful, you need to have a lot of testing. The RAND Corporation actually did a study that shows you need hundreds of billions of miles of testing to prove out that the computer and sensor systems of autonomous vehicles are just as safe as a human driver. Now, when you think about some of the premier companies out working in this space, we've got a long ways to go. We need hundreds of billions of miles. Tesla today is at about 1 billion, and Waymo is at about 10 million. So when we talk about level 5 autonomy and how long it will take to get there, a big part of that time frame is making sure that this testing and validation is done and done right.
This testing and technology development is taking place around the world. As an investor in autonomous and emerging technologies, Seamus Hatch advances this discussion by taking a look at what business decisions are needed to make AVs real.
Now let's have a look and think about, where does this leave the automotive industry, the companies that make up this industry, and where they expect to be in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time? So, looking at drivers for developing autonomous vehicles, why would you want to invest the money to develop one of these things? The first one is customer demand, both real demand and also perceived demand. But probably just as importantly, there's a tremendous amount of competitive pressure. If the competition are doing X, we want to at least match them feature for feature. And there's also a huge fear of being left behind. And really, a lot of this, I think, comes down to distributing bets. The future is really cloudy, and by distributing your bets, you're able to hedge the unknown. But then looking on the other side of the equation at some of the restraints, what makes it difficult to get there?
The adoption of an autonomous future goes well beyond the technology. There are legal issues and a fragmented regulatory framework.
Another big aspect of how these technologies will get rolled out is actually based on the legal environment. Different countries have different regulations that they adopt for how vehicles and how drivers are regulated. Today we're going to focus on the US. In the US, the federal government regulates vehicles. So you have things like NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that sets many requirements for how vehicles can operate. There's also the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards that set requirements for how a vehicle must be designed. The states have responsibility for regulating drivers. It's where you go to get your driver's license, you do your driver's test and things like that. As we move towards an autonomous future for level 4 and level 5 vehicles, where there isn't a human driver, that actually creates a pretty interesting situation where the vehicle, which is federally regulated, actually is also the driver, which is regulated by the state. So today, there is a patchwork of legal establishment in different states, either by legislation or executive order, trying to create clarity for how autonomous vehicles can be deployed and tested on public roads. This is very important to understand, especially if you want to help autonomous vehicles be deployed in the world, to understand how you need to get the approval for operation in different states. There's also a lot of attention globally, and the Aspen Institute, along with Bloomberg Philanthropies, has tried to create some amount of clarity for the different projects that are going on. If you visit their website, you can find out more, but it's a great way to figure out which places have established clear legislation versus which places have actually gotten vehicles out on the road. There are vehicles out in some communities. Today, Waymo is providing transportation in Phoenix and Chandler, Arizona. There are specific people who are a part of their test group that have the ability to ride in the Waymo vehicles. In some cases, the vehicles that they are in do not have a driver. And that's the first time we've seen that on public roads. Optimus Ride is operating in Brooklyn, New York. They're providing transportation from a ferry to an office building in a private enterprise park. And May Mobility is on the road in Detroit, providing transportation for car commuters from their parking structure to their office building, working in mixed traffic. We're also on the road in Providence, Rhode Island, helping to connect people from the Amtrak station across 2 different lines of transit, as well as bike share. And we've launched in Grand Rapids as well, helping to connect the city across the river and between downtown and parking at the outskirts. This technology is great